Hello, everybody, and welcome to Unmasking, a podcast about coming home to yourself. I'm your host, Cindy Payne, therapist, storyteller, and fellow human navigating the messy, beautiful work of growth and healing. Here at Unmasking, we explore what it means to unmask, to peel back the layers of roles, expectations, and old narratives, and reconnect with who we are at our core. Through honest conversations, solo reflections, and the lens of self trust, we'll hold space for the stories that shape us and the parts of ourselves that we're learning to reclaim. This is a place for strong backs, soft fronts, and wild hearts. Let's get into it. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to this week's episode of Unmasking. I'm so excited for today. I've been just eagerly anticipating this conversation. And before we begin, I'd love to introduce you to our guest this week. And I actually found Janelle through Instagram, which is a lovely tool for those of us in the mental health field because we find different people with different backgrounds and specialties. And when I saw the name of her practice, Teen Translation, I was like, oh, I've got to talk to her immediately because not only do I work with teens, but I have teens. And so let's just go ahead and get into it. Thank you, Janelle, for joining us today. And if you don't mind, I'd like to start just by reading a little bit of your bio that you've shared so the listeners can have an idea of your background. So
Sounds good.
yeah, before we started recording, we were talking about just this busy season of getting our kiddos ready for college. And I'll just start by saying that as both a therapist and a parent of twin boys who are seniors in high school, I have been thinking a lot about this transition from high school into adulthood or emerging adulthood, as I should say, how exciting it is, but also how overwhelming it can feel for teens and for parents. And that's why I'm so glad that Janelle agreed to come on here today. So a little bit about Janelle. She is a licensed marriage and family therapist and the founder of Teen Translation. She's worked closely with high schools and families across California, including serving as a clinical supervisor with San Gabriel Unified's Wellness Center, where she mentored clinicians in training and created resources for students, parents, and staff. She's also taught child and adolescent therapy at the graduate level, and she continues to meet with teens, families, and even entertainment industry professionals through her private practice. With her dual master's degrees in marital and family therapy and theology and a background in theater arts and broadcast journalism, Janelle brings a unique blend of experience and perspective. Today, we're going to be talking about how parents can support their teens in this huge life transition after high school while also caring for ourselves along the way. So thank you, Janelle, once again for being here today.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here and just to be in this conversation with everybody.
Yes, absolutely. I wanted to just get started with
Yeah.
just learning a little bit more about your own personal journey. What has inspired you to become a therapist focused on teens specifically?
Totally. So I think I've always worked with kids and youth. I was always working with the generation below me, if that makes sense. So whether
Hmm.
that's in academic settings, youth ministry, theater arts. And so I remember there was this point post grad from my undergraduate where I was mentoring a group of girls. And I just realized I didn't have the tools I needed to walk with them in the reality of their lives.
Yeah.
So I said, I want to work with them in a different way, maybe. And so that's
Hmm.
kind of how I got into marriage and family therapy. Um,
Okay.
but what I love about the teen years, and I think why I kind of settled into teen and family counseling, is it's really preventative work because
Mm.
so often when we're seeing adults, we're reprocessing what happened in the teen years. But
Yes.
if you're counseling teens, you're like, I'm here when it's happening. So we actually get to prevent these from becoming larger issues later in life. And they're also just really courageous and willing to try things, I think, in a way that adults, we don't always, because we're a little bit guarded or solidified. And so it's just such a creative process, I think, with teenagers at that age too.
Yes, I love what you said about it being preventative work. I don't think I've ever really thought about it through that lens before, but that makes so much sense to me that a lot of the things that are coming up are, things that are, kind of maybe touching on old wounds as parents. And
Mhm.
we remember what that felt like, but sometimes we're not always able to make the connection to where our teens can hear
Totally.
us and also feel seen and heard.
Totally. Totally.
Interesting.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So as far as teen translation, I just love that name. I think it's so catchy.
Oh, thank you.
Let's talk a little bit more about what that name means to you.
Totally. So, and I don't know if you have this experience too, Cindy, but, parents will come in the counseling room and say, I don't recognize my child anymore. Who is
Yeah.
this human that is living in my house that is now a teenager? And it
Hmm.
feels like we are speaking different languages as adults and teens. And so
Yes.
the teenager isn't really going to learn, or maybe isn't capable yet of learning, our adult language, but the adults
Hmm.
can learn the teen language. And kind of what I mean by that is a lot of the family misses or conflict, I think, has a lot to do with the adults misinterpreting the teenager's behavior, right? So here's a classic example.
Hmm.
If the teenager slams the door in your face, it's really easy as the adult or the parent to over personalize that. But if you
Yes.
can translate that developmentally and accurately as maybe they don't know how to talk about what's going on, maybe
Hmm.
they're overwhelmed, maybe they're exhausted, maybe they're hungry.
Yes.
Right? And so
Sure.
if the parent can look at the behavior and understand why they're seeing what they're seeing, it reduces emotional reactivity and they're able to hang with their teenager in a totally different, solid way
Yes.
in the teenager. So that's where all that translation emphasis comes in. Why you're seeing what you're seeing to reduce emotional reactivity in the system.
Yeah. So, in other words, like if the behavior had words,
Mhm.
what would the
Yeah.
words be?
Yep.
Is that
Totally.
okay? Okay.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
That is a common one. That is a common one. And it's hard as parents not to personalize that,
Oh,
right?
so
And to
hard.
wonder, like, what did
Yep.
I do wrong?
Because
Where are we
it's
going?
coming at you
Yes,
a lot of
totally.
times.
Quite literally. Quite
Yes.
literally.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. So if we can understand their language, we have a better chance at connecting with them. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's dive into some of these pressures.
Yeah.
Right now I am, like I said earlier, I'm getting ready to launch twin boys out into, be it college or if they take a different route, right? But along the way, there's a lot of pressures that are
Mm.
starting to build up. And so I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about some of the biggest pressures that teens feel when they are
Yeah.
faced with this life after high school
Yeah.
transition.
Totally. So I think it would be really helpful to define, what do we even mean when we say pressure? Right. So, like,
Mm,
Sydney, in your mind, and I've kind of got a definition in my back pocket. What does that even
mhm.
mean? Like, what is pressure?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think for me personally as a mom and also as a therapist that works with adolescents, what I hear in my community the
Yeah.
most is getting into a quote good school or having to know what you want to do as your major or just
Yeah.
as your vocation. When they start getting these questions, this starts back in junior high, middle school
Yeah. Oh,
years.
yeah. I have sixth graders talking about this. Yeah.
Yes, yes. And so I think that's kind of what I mean when I think about pressure is like the pressure to have a plan, the pressure to go to
Yeah.
a four-year college,
Yep.
um, the pressure to have a specific SAT score. What is that? What do you see in your practice with that?
Yeah, yeah. So, and kind of what you're talking about, just to give us a framework for understanding pressure and then sort of the perceived threat that kind of follows that, would be, it's the idea or the over awareness that this really huge outcome depends on your performance,
Mm,
and that failure to perform or any kind of failure results in really negative consequences. So what you're kind of holding is this massive hope or this thing that you long and desire for, with this
Mhm.
over awareness of what will happen if you fail to perform to achieve it. And so when you have the intersection of those extremes, that's the pressure cooker.
Ah, okay. Thank you for clarifying that. I think that's a really relevant topic there. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. And I to your point, I see their pressure sitting in, like, a couple of different, like, major areas, and then they all just sort of collide into this storm. So,
Yes.
tell me if you're seeing this, because I know you are right in the middle of these conversations. So,
Mhm.
the first pressure bucket would be pressure in future,
Yes.
which is this idea that, my okayness or my security in the future is based on this process. So
Mhm.
it's different in that I think there used to be just this awareness of I'd like to go into a good school to have like some opportunities in my future, but now
Yes.
there's this sense of unless I do this, I won't have a good future or a secure future, or even I might have a disastrous future.
Sure. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Go
Mhm.
ahead.
So that's one bucket, pressure and
Mhm.
future.
Mhm.
There's pressure and identity, right? Who I am
Mhm.
and what I'm worth and how I perceive myself is based on this process.
Yes.
There's pressure and social, how other people see me and determine my value and worth is based on this process. And
Yes.
then the last one, I would say, has to do with margin of error, which
Mhm.
these teenagers today, and again, tell me if you're seeing this. I think a lot about athletes, actually. My husband's a college golf coach, right? And
Mhm.
so we often talk about pressure in terms of your awareness of your performance during a golf tournament, for example. And athletes will self sabotage their
Mhm.
performance based on how they perceive the margin of error to get the job done. And
Ah,
so
that's so
you're
interesting.
also seeing a lot of students that are really focused on results to the point of perceiving I'm coming from behind to try to get this done, right? Or there isn't enough for everyone, or not everybody can land somewhere. So now the pressure cooker is also how they perceive where they line up in the pack. And
Yes.
we're going to get into more of those narratives and scarcity and fear based mindsets more. But they think that there's a very small margin of error in order to achieve the
Mhm.
result that they want.
Yeah, because in even thinking about college application processes in
Yeah.
2025,
Yeah.
it's so vastly different compared to, let's say, whenever I was in college,
Same.
25 plus years ago, when I
Same.
think I filled out a paper application, sent it in the mail myself, and waited for the acceptance letter, all
Yeah.
without my, family kind of guiding me there.
I did not take a single SAT prep course.
Oh, same. No, neither. Neither did I. I didn't even know that was a thing. It's like,
Same,
you can do
same. And I only applied to 6 schools,
Yeah.
right? And again, there it was actually kind of unheard of, and I don't know when you graduated high school. I graduated in 2001. It
Okay.
was rare for somebody to take an SAT prep course. So,
Absolutely.
very, very different 20 years later.
Sure. And then add to that social media.
Yeah,
So, social media, we know you talk about that pressure cooker, it really amplifies the pressure. What
yeah.
do you see in terms of social media and the influence?
Yeah, totally. So I think, and that kind of reminds me, talking about what it was like 20 years ago to apply to college. I remember I applied to UCLA's musical theater program, and I had no idea they accepted 12 applicants. I actually had no idea that it was competitive or that I
Yeah.
was really, coming from my tiny town. I just didn't have the awareness or didn't know enough to know
Mhm.
sort of what that process was at UCLA. So all that to say, how does that relate to social media? Everybody is aware of everything. So they have access and awareness now of everybody else's process. They have a front
Yeah.
row seat to everybody else's process, which I think a little awareness is okay.
Sure.
But what it does is it opens up the door to comparison. And
Mhm.
there's a big difference between competition and comparison, right? Because in the application process, if I'm competing to be the best version of myself,
Yeah.
That's one thing, right?
Mhm,
And with a few
mhm.
close friends or my close family, or sort of maybe more in this insulated, safe environment. But what social media does is it shifts then to comparison, where it's not about me being the best version of myself. It's
Mm-mm.
me being about being better than other people so
Yes.
that I can try to achieve the result that I want, because I feel so scared watching everybody else that if I'm
Mhm.
better than you, maybe I can guarantee that I can get into the schools that I want to. So then we really lean into this false sense of control by being better.
Yes. Oh gosh. I so appreciate you saying that because I think that's really hard for some people to really sit with and hear, but
Yeah.
it is the truth. We have that compare and despair,
Mm,
like
yeah.
why am I not performing the same way as this person? Why do I not have it all figured out yet? I mean,
Yep.
I
Mhm.
can tell you, my boys were telling me, on social media, they saw some kids this summer who had already posted like that they
Yeah.
had written their college applications
Oh,
and they'd
yeah.
sent it off and, posting videos of them studying at a coffee shop for this. And they're just like trying to enjoy their last summer before their senior year.
Total well, and that's a great point, because what it
Yeah,
does is it just puts the material in your brain, right, where now you're in a self-doubt spiral, because
sure.
if your boys had just sort of done their thing and trusted their process, right, or like, "This is what
Hmm.
we decided as a family to, like, really enjoy this summer," and then shift
Yeah.
gears, they're gonna be okay in their unique process.
Yes.
That's right for them. But then when social media opens the door, then you're wondering, am I supposed to be doing what they're doing? Am
Yeah.
I like, it's harder to trust your own individual process. It's harder to stay in your
Mm.
lane.
Yes, very much so. So, as a parent,
Mm,
coming into your practice and they're noticing this with their teen,
yeah.
how can they be more attuned to recognizing when their teen is feeling overwhelmed by these expectations, especially if they have a teen, let's say, that's not super communicative? I don't want to stereotype, but with my boys, it's sometimes harder to get that information out of them. So, how can they recognize that?
Totally. So, and tell me if this would be a good time to jump into this. I think this is part of the teen translation. Let's
Hmm.
talk about what's happening developmentally, because
Yeah.
that is really going to give parents a framework for understanding maybe why they're seeing the overwhelm or the avoidance, right? Which is
Yes.
maybe, what you're talking about when they're
Mhm.
wondering what is happening with my child in this
Yes.
process, right? So, a couple of things to remember developmentally. Um, they are just beginning to establish coping skills in the teenage years. This is
Yeah.
new, right? Like, we are born knowing that we need to want to eliminate pain. We are not born knowing how,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
That's the developed skill. And so this huge massive stressor hits in the college application process. It's a lot, but they're just beginning to establish the coping. That muscle hasn't been fully developed. So you'll see that intersection.
Yeah.
Another really big one that you're going to see is, I think parents forget this, adults, we forget this because we're so
Mhm.
far from our teenage years.
Mm.
The ability to think about the future is a cognitive skill you do not have until you're a teenager.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's brand new, right? And
Mhm.
so, for better or worse, for the first time, you now have the ability to see what is happening now, or the choices you make now extending into the future. And
Sure.
so, if you think about that, if that's happening for the first time,
Mhm.
that's pretty overwhelming.
Yes.
And the entire college application process is about future. And again, using this new skill that they're not very practiced at, which is
Yeah.
evaluating the present as far as its extension into the future. And so that's why you'll see a lot of freeze, is because it's completely overwhelming for them to consider that all the time.
Mhm. Mhm.
The third one, and Cindy, I know that you work with all the teens, all the ages.
Yeah.
So remember, parents, that there's a shift that happens from junior high to high school, where
Mhm.
in junior high there is no separation of what I think and feel from what my friends think and feel. We are one in junior
Yep.
high, right?
Yep.
And I don't know where my friend group begins and I end. It's just one big blob. And it's supposed to be,
Yes.
right? That's developmentally important. But in
Yes.
high school, we have the emergence of the separate self, where again, for the first time, they are beginning to realize I might think something different than my group of friends. I
Yeah.
might feel something different. I might want something different. But again,
Mhm.
this is a new skill. And so it's really easy for them to slide back into groupthink. Like, what is everybody else doing for college? I should be doing what everybody else is doing or thinking and feeling the same things, as opposed to standing on the separate self, which is maybe what's best for them isn't what's best for me, but it's hard for
Yeah.
them to stay there again because it's a new skill.
Yes. Okay. That's such a great point because I would think that that would create a sense of like lack of safety in the nervous system,
Mhm.
right? When you're just
Mhm.
constantly like looking at your peers of like trying to assimilate and figure out like where do I belong in all of this?
Mhm, mhm,
Yeah.
mhm. Well,
Okay.
and they don't have a lot of practice. That just made me think, part of how we regulate ourselves as adults when we're making future decisions is looking back on our big decisions that went well.
Yes. Okay.
Because you're like, "Wow, I could trust myself. It didn't go perfect, but I figured it out." Like, that's really grounding to look back on our history. This is often a first big decision where they can't look back and say, "Oh, I've made really great big decisions in the past."
Yeah.
They're they don't know that they can trust themselves necessarily
Right.
yet. And so it can
Okay.
feel really overwhelming, like, "Oh, that's why there's so much stress on getting it right."
So talking about bridging the gap with parents,
Yeah.
um, what what I would love to pick your brain about is miscommunication with teens and parents with discussing the future. So
Yeah.
let's say that you're working with a teen and they come in and they're
Yeah.
like, "Oh my gosh, like my parents, they're always on me about college, or they're talking to me about college and I don't want to talk about it." And let's say you've given parents kind of a developmental understanding
Yeah.
of why this is so hard for teens, but the communication piece, when they
Yep.
are outside of your office, there's a breakdown, right?
Mhm.
What do you often hear and see with your clients
Totally.
about those communications?
Totally. So I think a biggie, this happens all the time, where I'll have a parent say, "I never told them they had to go to an Ivy." Right? Or they'll
Mm,
say, I've shared that it's fine if they wanna go to community college and then transfer. I'm saying this till I'm, red in the face, but they're telling me I'm putting so much pressure on them." And what I want parents to understand is, um, the anxiety, and I feel for you parents, their anxiety is oftentimes not coming from you, the parent. Right? It's
yeah.
coming from their peers, right? They are
Yes.
saturated in this social conversation, and don't forget the social voice is the strongest voice at this age. It holds the most influence.
Yes.
Where think of and I talk about this, in some of my educational videos, the herd effect, right? Where
Mm,
if there's this herd of gazelle and there's a lion, right? The gazelle at the back is going to immediately start running, and then the whole pack will start running before they even sense that the lion is there. The anxiety travels. And so if your child is saturated in a communal anxiety all day, they're
mhm.
going to come home in that state. But parents, it's not because you're putting it on them, it's because it's in the herd.
Yes.
And then the other thing developmentally, parents, I would say, is you're probably carrying a lot of projection from your child in that
Mhm.
they're not able to take on the perspective of other people very well yet. So
Okay.
oftentimes what they're doing is I, the teenager, right? What I think and feel, mom and dad, that's what you think and feel. That's what the
Mm,
adults want from me. When really, the teenagers projecting their own pressures onto you, the adults, right? So if they're like, "I have to
yes.
go to an Ivy," then they're like, "Well, mom and dad say I have to go to an Ivy," even though you've never
Right.
said that. I don't know, does that resonate at all with
Yes,
what
it
you
does.
see? Yeah.
Yes, it does. And so if a parent is hearing this
Yeah.
and really trying to work on the communication piece and wanting to support their
Yeah.
teen without adding more pressure, where do they start?
Totally. Totally. So, and I think repeat. right? Parents, like I always am a big encourager of put your messaging on repeat. They need to hear it over and over again. So you
Yeah.
can even say to your child, I know there's a lot of noise around you right now. Do you want to hear what I think about this process? Right? Like it might be really different than what you're assuming.
Hmm. Hmm.
I'd love to share with you, or, even shifting to a conversation. Again, think of the herd, think of the group, right? They're
Hmm.
so focused on what everybody else is doing, supporting the emergence of that separate self and just saying, hey, come here, we're going to put blinders on. What is
Yeah.
right for you? What is right in
Mm,
your unique process? Who cares about the results? And I know parents, that's really hard because obviously we want good things for our children, but
of
let's
course.
stay process oriented and really hone in on their unique journey, staying in their lane and sort of being, I think of like the bumpers on a bowling alley, being those bumpers for
Yeah.
them where you kind of get to hold this safe space where we get to be separate from the pack and say, let's
Yes.
get, let's get, let's do this in a way that's right for you and our family.
Gosh, that's such a beautiful and important skill, though, not just for teens, but I was just sitting here thinking as you were talking, like if
Yeah.
if our teens can have that ability or at
Yeah,
least the practice with it, then by the time they're in their 20s and they decide, hey, I maybe don't want to do what I went to college for. I want to
totally.
career switch or I want to
Yep.
pivot in my life, right? Like then they have a stronger sense of self in which to draw upon because
Mhm.
they're not as focused on looking at what everybody else around them is doing,
Yep.
even well into an adulthood.
Yep.
So,
Yep. Well,
yeah.
and you actually you brought up a really good point of, the what if I don't do what I did in college, right?
Uh-huh.
This and so talking about where I think there's been a huge shift in the application process and again where parents can support.
Yeah.
It seemed to be that the point of college or the emphasis was exploration.
Mm,
Right?
mhm.
Like we go to college to explore. We go to college to try things on. This is James Marcia and the four identity statuses, right? Where you're
Mhm.
talking about achievement being the combo of exploration and then commitment. But what we
Yes.
have today is what is called foreclosure, which
Yes.
is no exploration and high commitment. And so now it seems that the application process or the college choice is about having fully arrived, right? Or
Mhm.
um, fully commit, or again, it's more about, again, reducing the risk of a bad future by being certain on what you're doing now instead of
Mhm.
college is part of the process to figure out who you
Yes.
are and what you want to do. It is not the destination. So, all that to say, back to your question, emphasize parents you're okay that this is exploration, that you expect them to
Yes.
explore and not to know who they are and not to have fully
Mhm.
arrived or committed to a perceived future identity or career.
Sure. Yeah, I appreciate you saying that because I know that that's not always understood in these like high competitive communities, right? So thank you for drawing awareness over to that. i
Yeah, yeah.
i, I want to see if we can switch over. I mean, it's still kind of in the same vein
Yeah,
of future readiness, but
yeah.
you work with teens in the entertainment
Oh,
industry,
yeah.
and so for those teens that are maybe thinking about going that direction, be it
Mhm.
through a college program or just launching straight into the entertainment industry, what are some unique challenges that these teens face?
Yeah, and it's interesting, I'll actually talk a lot about the acting and entertainment industry process when I'm talking with people about the college application process.
Oh, really?
There's a lot of crossover. So, what teen actors have to learn how to manage, but we
Uh-huh.
can manage it really well, is rejection,
Yeah.
right? What do I do when I get a no? What do I do when I feel like I'm getting mostly no's? Because if
Mm,
you're going to be an actor in film and television, the yeses are rare, right? And
yes.
so, how do we manage that in a way where we can still know who we are and feel really good about our craft and be so okay no matter what the acting career is doing, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Sure.
and then the other thing I think that they really grapple with, which again sounds a lot like application sometimes, is
Hmm.
why do the decision makers have control over the thing I love or want?
Ooh,
right?
Yeah.
Application process too, right? Why do the admissions representatives, like, they get to make the call on this thing that really matters to me? That's so hard. And
Hmm.
so, really walking with the actor through, hang on, yes, there is a process here and we can't change Hollywood or the process, but can we change the ways that you relate to it, where you're not so obsessed with the decision maker, uh, wanting you, calling you in, whatever it might be, but you can feel good no matter what about bringing yourself to the role, to the part, to the audition, regardless of results.
Yeah, yeah. I love that. So it's this way of helping them like keep the fire underneath their ambition, but also let's focus a little bit on like the mental well-being side of things
Hmm.
so that when you do get these rejections by people who might not know you up close and personal, you're okay. You're still
Hmm.
going to be okay at the end of all this.
Totally.
And builds that resiliency too, I would think.
Yep. Yep. I build my life in such a way that I am okay no matter what the results are.
Yeah. Okay. I like that. And that's a good skill inside of the entertainment industry and outside.
Yep.
But
Yep.
I would imagine, like you said, you're experiencing maybe a little bit more frequency of this in
Yeah.
the entertainment industry.
Yeah, yeah, and
Yeah.
also redefining what the no means, right? Because
Ooh, that's
you
good.
might turn in an amazing audition, but only one person gets the part, right? And so you can still see a no as a victory, right? So this also relates to college applications. A no is a mismatched need, right? Like what they hoped for and
Yeah.
I hoped for was not the same, but it's not a rejection of who I am, right? And so I can get a
Yes.
no and still feel like I did a great job. I can turn in an
Yeah.
audition and say that was a win, even though they didn't hope for the same thing that I hoped for.
Ooh, that just landed. Can you say that again? A no is a mismatched need, not a
Rejection
rejection
of
of who I
who I
am.
am. Yeah.
I love that.
Mhm.
That's big. I might steal that one
Mhm.
from you. That's
Mhm.
really good. That's really
Mhm.
good and really important for our kids to understand. Well, and adults.
Oh gosh. Oh gosh. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm doing this with teen actors, but also adult actors. We talk about these rejection pieces a lot.
Yeah.
When you put yourself
Oh
out
my
there, you're going
goodness.
to get no's, and so we got to know how to handle the no's.
Yeah. Ooh, that's big. So, can you share any lessons from supporting these young performers and that kind of maybe apply to teens in any high pressure environment?
Yeah, yeah, totally, totally. So, I mean, that is a biggie. It's a skill to learn to manage no's and disappointment so that we feel really solid. Like, I can handle
Mhm.
that and I can be okay. And so we'll keep putting ourselves out there and dreaming and trying things because
Yeah.
we know we can metabolize it.
Yes.
The other thing that I think we work with a lot that is, I think, also good across the board in these kinds of processes is essentially it's addressing codependency, although I might not use that word with a teenager necessarily, but it's
Yeah.
balancing my awareness of the other with myself. And so I can have awareness that a director or producer might be looking for something, or I can have awareness of what a certain university is looking for, or
Mhm.
kind of requiring in the application process. But I can't be obsessed and sacrifice myself for the other. I have to
Yeah.
bring myself into balance, right? Which is, what do I need? What do I
Mhm.
want? What do I hope for? What's right for me? What's my boundary? And actually, what am I going to say no to? I think they also need to know
Yeah.
I might get into a school and say, no, actually, guys, you're going to say no to a lot of schools because you only choose
Sure.
one.
Yes. So you're interviewing them just as much as they're interviewing you.
1,000%. So bringing
Yeah.
yourself back into the equation in a balanced way so that it doesn't
Yes.
just feel like you're at the mercy or obsessing over what do they want from me? Hang on.
Yes.
Where are you in this process? Let's take up some space.
So important. Gosh, that's so important. All these resiliency building
Mm.
things are, are hard work. It requires maintenance, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
know the word self-care or the term self-care has been, um, in my opinion, kind of overused or maybe misused sometimes in the mental health field. We kind of got really into that self-care there for a while during the COVID years, and so everybody kind of thinks like, oh, a bubble bath and getting your nails done, right? But like, or is when we're talking with teens, it's like, are you getting enough sleep? Are you eating well? And so I get a lot of eye rolls whenever I talk
Oh,
about
me
that,
too.
sometimes with
Yeah.
my own personal teens. And I wonder if, well, this is kind of a two-parter.
Yeah.
Are there some practical, we might not call them self-care strategies, but
Yeah.
practical strategies that really resonate with teens?
Yeah.
And do you have any kind of go-to exercises that you often might share with teens in regards to resiliency and caring for yourself? Does
Totally,
that make
totally.
sense?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So,
Okay.
I can relate. Anytime I tell a teenager to go on a gentle walk, they're like, "Really, really, Janelle?" Like I get the eye rolls
Right.
too. So,
Right. Yeah.
I think this generation. Gosh, I feel so old saying this generation, right? But these teenagers today tend to lean toward overworking, especially in these high achieving high schools. Uh,
Yeah.
and so what you'll see is self neglect while they're working. So it's this really interesting thing where they don't think they can take care of themselves
Hmm.
or celebrate anything or even build in a reward until the task is done.
Yeah.
Now, if it's a short term task, okay, like maybe studying for one test, that doesn't fly with a year-long college application process. You
Yeah.
cannot neglect yourself for a year until you achieve the result, which is what a
Sure.
lot of kids try to do. And
Hmm.
so it's not necessarily that I'm giving them specific, because I make them come up with their own self-care skills.
Yeah. I love that.
Like they have to make their own list, right? But saying, how do you want to build this in the middle of working hard? And so
Hmm.
a lot of times it would be if you spend a morning working on your personal essay, how are you going to reward yourself? Are you going to go to the movies with your family? Are you going to go see your friends? Right? Okay.
Hmm.
If you just took an SAT exam, before you jump into the next thing, how do you want to celebrate that? Right? How do you want
Yeah.
to take a moment to celebrate the victory? Or do you need to choose sleep tonight instead of studying for a test? And a lot of parents might not like this, but choosing the things where good enough is good enough and
Yes.
an okay effort with all the things you have going on, fine. Right?
Yeah.
Sleep, eat, whatever, watch your favorite silly comforting show.
Yes.
So building in those practices in the middle of high demand.
Okay. I love that. I love that. So getting them to understand and start to maybe think differently about their pacing
Mhm.
is what
Mhm.
I'm hearing you say. Okay.
Totally, totally. This is a
Cool.
new skill for them also. Back to the
Yeah.
developmental piece. This is a brand new for them.
Sure. Sure. That's a great one. So when we are in this season with our kiddos, whether this be their freshman year of high school or their senior year of high school, what do you recommend staying away from, avoiding saying when talking about life after high school?
Yeah. So I was really curious, and I can't vouch for this data. So everybody, please go do your own research. But I wanted to know: is it actually harder to get into college today than it was 20 years ago?
Ah,
Have you ever done just a general search on that, like an AI
I
search?
haven't, but now I want to.
Yeah, because and again, I'm pulling up these studies, but I wanted to know, is it actually harder? And I was really surprised to find it's not, according to the
Of course.
general data survey, right?
Yeah.
And so, in fact, they were saying admissions is even a little bit higher than 20 years ago.
Sure. There's so many things to choose from, so many colleges and
There's
paths. Yeah.
there's so many, and so I think to answer your question, kind of looping that back in, if we can stay away from scarcity and fear based talk,
Ooh, yes.
right? Because if the
Yes.
reality is there is a really awesome high chance you're going to find a school that you're excited about. Let's
Yeah.
roll with that, and especially if it's more accurate. Now, will there be universities that are really, really competitive and have always been really, really competitive? Sure.
Sure.
but we don't need to live in fear and anxiety throughout this entire
Hmm.
process because it's more likely they're going to find a really great school that is a really great fit for them where they're going to be really happy.
Yes. Thank you for saying that because I think this requires us as parents, educators, like to check our own anxieties at the door.
Mhm.
And I think sometimes that's the hardest part to hear on the parenting side of things is like, "Ooh, is this my
Yeah.
anxiety or is this their
Right.
anxiety?"
Whose anxiety is this? And are we just feeding
Yeah.
each other's? Totally.
Sure. Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. What about educators? Because I know like a lot of, again, let me back up. I've been trying to really be very careful about how many times I bring
Yeah.
this up, how many, like
Yeah.
it was funny because I was sharing Janelle and I were talking before we started recording that I was on a trip this past weekend with my twins, showing them some universities and at dinner. I naturally wanted to talk about like, what did you think? Could you see yourself here and all of that? And finally, we had to kind of
Mhm.
create like a set of rules that like I wasn't allowed to talk about college and I wasn't allowed to talk about mental health on this trip. So then I'm like, well, what else is there to talk about? But I wonder, sometimes these kiddos are coming home from school and they're like, my teachers are already on
I
me
know.
about it. So from an educator perspective, what can they do differently to better support teens?
Totally. So we could talk about educators, but you brought up such an amazing point I want to just emphasize is in this process, parents schedule dates with your children where you are not allowed to talk about the college application process.
Beautiful. Yes. Yes.
But they have to do it too. It's hard for them too. Um,
Totally.
because that, believe it or not, brings down the threat level of this process because
Mhm.
it sends the message my life is full again regardless of this process. I'm going to take it seriously and show up and be my best self, but there is so much more that I have to stand on.
Yeah.
And so there's a solidness that comes from we have other things to talk about besides this process, and you are not the process, right? You are so much more than the process. You have value and worth regardless of what is going on. Speak worth over your children, unconditional worth. So that's my little soapbox
Yes.
over there, but
So important to hear that.
coming back to
And
educators. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
oh no, no, go ahead.
But coming back to the educators piece, I think not enabling fear-based scarcity mindset and narratives,
Yeah.
right? Just be really careful with our words. It's contagious, right? So can we be intentional to really talk
Mhm.
about what could go well, what is really hopeful, right? Not leaning into the fear. And then I would also say normalizing exploration. Again,
Yeah.
the college process is part of your exploration. It's not the destination. You're supposed to be exploring. This is developmentally, right? You're not supposed to know exactly who you are, what you want to do, what you want to be. This is normal. Um,
Yes.
and then practically helping them break big tasks down into small steps. That's also a new skill. And so, how can we
Yeah.
support practically the executive functioning too?
Yeah, I think you just answered my next question with that. I was going to ask you, like, if you could just sum it up, and I know this is really challenging to do, especially with this topic, but if you could sum up,
Yeah.
one piece of advice in supporting their kiddos' journey, what would it be? And I hear you saying, like being careful with your words and speaking their worth and their value over them versus hey, like I've succumbed to this competitiveness as well and this fear and scarcity thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like teenager, you are choosing to
Mhm.
engage in this college application process. And for all its benefits and faults, we can't change the process, but we can change how we relate to the process. And a
Yeah.
big part of that is teenager, you are so worthy and so valuable and so important and so gifted,
Mhm.
regardless what the results end up being. But you are
Yeah.
intact no matter what this thing is doing over here, and our family is intact and solid.
Sure, sure. And this just kind of got me thinking too. This is maybe a little bit veering off topic, but I was just
Yeah.
thinking about how, like in the Western world, like we are one of the only cultures that launches our
Mm.
kids out into the world at 17, 18 years old to go
Yeah.
like sometimes move across country without ever having lived independently in their lives, and it's just as scary for us as parents as it is for the
Yeah.
kids, right? Where we're not really giving them like a soft
Yeah.
launching. It's kind of like, okay, I'm in the deep end and like sink or swim, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Well, and they, especially post-COVID, they're
mm,
already feeling a little bit developmentally young. I'll hear
yeah.
a lot of conversations, and again, this is where we have to be repetitive as the adults, is,
Yes.
to your point, reminding them, we don't expect you to have fully adulted before you
No.
go to school, right? And that's
Right.
important for the parents and the child, that we can scaffold this. Scaffolding means we're building this like a ladder, where we're going to do things throughout the years where you get to increase in confidence. Maybe that's you learn how to do a load of laundry. Maybe that's you're driving yourself to an appointment, right?
Yes.
But also, we don't expect you to just be, all right, you're good to go. Okay, see you later. No, we're going to
Yeah.
stay really connected to you. We're here if you
Hmm.
need us.
Hmm.
We don't expect you to have it all figured out. You're still learning. You're not fully cooked. Just repetitive messaging around
Yes.
and normalizing. They're still in process.
I so appreciate you saying that, and especially drawing attention to the COVID kiddos, right? Because they did miss out on so much of that connection
Yeah.
piece, because I was just thinking back to like my boys specifically. They were in sixth grade when that all
Hmm.
started, and now
Yep.
here they are, but they've missed like a good chunk of that developmental time, which is important. So the scaffolding that I don't have to dump all the lessons on them
Nope.
in this like what 10 months that I have
Right.
left or whatever.
That's such a
Yeah,
good point. Do you feel like that's true, that parents kind of feel like the launch to college
absolutely.
is a ticking clock? Better get it all done before they launch.
Oh, I hear it all the time.
Oh
It's like,
gosh.
wait, you don't know how to call the doctor and make an appointment. You don't know how to change a flat tire. Like,
Yep.
it's okay.
It's okay. They're
It's
in
okay.
process, and they're going to be in
We're going to figure it
process
out.
well into
Yeah.
their 20s.
Yeah. Right.
That's okay, right?
And that's okay.
That's really, really, really normal. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, I appreciate you saying that. And speaking to the teens that might
Yeah.
be listening to this,
Yeah.
if you could share a message about their future, what would it be for them?
Oh gosh, I have so many.
Yeah.
But I do think it, especially right now with what I'm seeing, is it's okay to be in process, right? It's okay
Yeah.
to keep being in process. It's okay to keep exploring. It's okay to keep falling and getting back up. It's okay to not know things, right? You don't have to be fully cooked. I think the other one, because they get so locked in fear, again, that threat feels so high, for
Hmm.
getting it right, is again, come back to your lane. What if it's not about a right and a wrong decision, but what's more right for you? Like, there's probably a lot of places where you could be really happy. And so, how can we figure out what feels more aligned with who you are? It's not a right or a wrong threat stance, but just trust your gut. We can, trust your instincts.
Yes.
And also, what could go well? I come back to that one all
Ooh.
the time. They're always concerned with what's going to go sideways or terribly or wrong.
Yeah.
Hey, you are capable. Where are you proud of what's happening right now? What could go well? How are you trusting
Sure.
your process, right? There's a lot you can trust in what you've been doing. So
Absolutely. Gosh, that's so important to remember. And I always like with my teens and my parents when we talk about like anxiety
yeah.
specifically around this topic is that,
Yeah.
really the brain is searching for certainty.
Mhm.
And so we're looking for those absolutes. But it's again, what I hear you saying so much of is like, let's practice sitting in the gray.
Mhm.
Let's practice sitting in that, like, it could go this way or it could go this way. And if it goes this way, this could be wonderful,
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, which that's the distress tolerance piece that I think a lot of us, even as adults, like we're not super
Yeah.
comfortable with it, to be honest. And so modeling that
Yeah.
as much as possible are how we're
Yeah.
managing our own discomfort.
And to your point, it's not, the comfort isn't in the result and knowing exactly what it looks like.
Yes.
It's, I may not know exactly what it looks like yet, but I know that I can trust myself in the process. no
Yeah.
matter what's going on. Like and if I don't know what to do, I'll ask for help, right? It's all that capability that comes from accurately estimating who you
Hmm.
are and how you manage things as you're going through it, and also pulling on your support system when you need
Yeah,
encouragement.
absolutely. Gosh, I could talk to you for for hours about this, not only from a parent perspective, but from the fellow therapist perspective. And
Yeah,
I
yeah.
appreciate every little nugget of wisdom that you've brought here today and just your
Mm.
understanding of this population. And I know that people listening are going to want to consume more information in this area. And so I'm wondering if you could share a little bit about where people might be able to find you online in your practice
Yeah.
and yeah,
Yeah,
going
totally.
forward.
So, you can find me at my website, www.teentranslation.com, teen like teenager.
Yeah.
Or you can find me on Instagram, at teen.translation.
Team dot trans.
Also, I can, as a therapist, work with anybody on telehealth in California, but you have to be
Okay.
located in California.
Yes.
And then I'm always rolling out new educational materials. I actually have a freebie on my Instagram right now. It's called the College Funnel, which
Cool.
really helps, again, the teenager get aligned with their priorities in the process, and
Okay.
their lane and their unique journey. So that's also just up there as a free resource for anybody that wants it.
No, I don't think I've seen that, but I'm going to go and check that out immediately. And I know if you don't follow Janelle yet, then I highly encourage you to follow her on Instagram because she makes some really fun, just applicable videos. And it's so fun. And that was what originally like drew me to you anyway, was just seeing like kind of how you put yourself out there,
Oh, thank
from the
you.
aspect of working with teens. And so, you will want to follow her, and I will link her information in this episode so that you can get in contact with her if you have any questions or if you are in California and would like to work with her directly. And I just can't thank you enough for giving your
Um,
time and your expertise and meeting you over Instagram. And I look forward to being able to work with you more in the future. And if you're willing to come back on the pod in the future, I would love that as well. So,
Totally. I'd love to. And Cindy, it was so good to be with you and your community and everyone
yes.
listening. So thank you for having me.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you, Janelle. And take care, everybody. And we hope to have Janelle back soon. Thank you, guys.